All right, for this bell work, one of the main things we want to see on this is that you do not do 4 plus 6. Because, well, 4 plus 6, that would be 10, but 8 minus 10, that would give you negative 2. We don't want you to do this, okay, because that is out of the order of operations. Forget about PEMDAS, okay, because it's not always in that specific order. Sometimes subtraction will come before addition, as long as it's to the left of the addition, which it is. So you'd have to do 8 minus 4 first, which is 4. Now you can add your 6, which would give you 10 in the end. All right, here's our objective for the day. I can use a calculator to change decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals, but also a third thing we need to be able to do with those calculators is to perform order of operations with those calculators, okay? So take a minute and copy this down, please. All right, now that we know what we're supposed to be learning today, let's go and take a look at that calculator. The TI-30XS Multi-View Calculator, which looks like this, and it's only yellow because we get them yellow in school. If you buy one online, it's like blue and white. I don't know, something like that, okay? But it should look pretty much like this. The button structure is exactly the same. And yes, knowing the buttons, the number buttons is important. But you can see in white here, the kind of the main buttons we're using, the numeric buttons. But also, there's the decimal button right here at the very bottom row. Also, it's crucial that you understand that the negative button here is different than the minus button here. There's a difference between negatives and minuses, and the calculator knows the difference so long as you tell it. Okay, plus if you try to say like negative 1/2, but you use the minus, it'll think minus 1/2, what are you minusing 1/2 from? And then it'll tell you that some kind of syntax there or something like that, okay? So you gotta be aware of these buttons at least. Okay, now we're gonna be using this button here in a little bit. I'm gonna talk about that more. Enter is the equals button, so when you actually want to evaluate whatever it is you're looking at, just use the enter button. Now, some of the other crucial buttons, for example, is this. This is the cursor button. Okay, so on the screen, you're going to have a cursor. I think it's a box that kind of blinks like this. If you want to move with that box throughout your problem, you just use these buttons, either to the left or right or up or down. Doesn't matter. Another button that will be crucial for us is the fraction button here. You see how that's an n over d? Make that a little bit bigger. Right there, n over d, see? Well, n over d is because n is your numerator, d is your denominator, n over d. We're going to be using that button quite a bit today as we operate with fractions, but with the calculator instead. Okay, so there's a few other buttons we'll be familiar with, particularly this one right here today. And also, you'll notice the parentheses buttons. Okay, these will be crucial to us. And then, of course, the 4 basic operations: division, multiplication, subtraction, and addition. And there is the exponent button, which is this one right here. If you want to go into exponent mode, you will need to be using this button right here. We don't see, in fact, I don't remember seeing any exponents today, but in the future we may see some, especially with the order of operations. So there's a few other functions that we'll see we just may not use in this unit. Like you can see the percentages right here. Yeah, those are nice. Okay. But again, numeric, the fraction button, and then our 4 basic operations. But this button right here is how we tell the calculator, hey, calculator, I want to change a fraction to a decimal or a decimal to a fraction, and it will know. It will know how to do that. So let's go through this. We just want to change 7 over 20 into a decimal. Okay. Now, there's 2 ways to do this, and we'll show both ways. Okay, so 7 over 20. So naturally, I would push the 7 button. Now, if I want to show this as a fraction, I will use the n over d button. Okay, and then I'll just type in 20. I'm not going to push both. I'm not going to show both buttons, but you push 20 now. And then you could, if you wanted to, you could push enter. Okay, now when you do this though on the calculator, it's just going to go. It's going to say, you know that fraction you told me to put in? I gave it back. But we need to tell the calculator, hey, I want this as a decimal, and to do that, I just need to push this double arrow button that's right above the enter button. See this one? Right here? This one. Okay. Now when you push that, it will automatically change that back into decimal format, well, I guess into decimal format, which should show a 0.35 right there. And that would be your decimal. Now that's one method to do this. The other method is just to make this, instead of a fraction, remember your fraction lines are actually division signs, so you could have just typed in 7 and then divided it by 20 instead. And then when you push enter, it would have given you the 0.35 right away. Now I don't really care which method you use. Some of you guys are like, Mr. Sal, I'm gonna be using long division every time. I don't want no stinking calculator. I don't care. It's up to you, man. You can do whatever you want. All right, what about this negative 6/5? Well, it is negative, and that's not a problem because I can type in my negatives without any problem. So I'm going to start this fraction as being negative. Okay, so that's the negative button, not the minus button. It's the negative button's on that bottom row down right here. Okay, so that's the button I push, the negative button. And then I can put in my other values. Now I'll type in my 6. And again, you can use divide if you'd like, but I want you guys to get used to just seeing that fraction button right now. You could have used division. It'll give you the same answer. And then it'll even show that the cursor now is in the denominator. Just push the 5, and then you can push enter. Now, it's going to give you back the negative 6/5. So now, at this point, we need to push the double arrow button again. And that tells the calculator that I don't want the fraction, I want the decimal. And the calculator says, hey, no problem. I got the decimal for you right here. Now let's make that negative 1.2. There we go. That's what we should have gotten. All right, how about decimals to fractions? But what about a decimal to a fraction? Now it's not really a pretty decimal. It's not super ugly either. But we can tell the calculator to do that too. So let's go and do that. Okay, so I'm going to type in 5.785, right? So I'm going to type my 5. And then I need the decimal button, which is, again, it's just right to the right of 0. And then I'll type in my 785. 785. Now on the calculator screen, you even see 5.785 right there, right? Now I want to tell the calculator to change this into a fraction for me, please. And as long as I say please, it will do it. So to do that, I'm just going to push the double arrow button down there at the bottom right there. And that tells the calculator, hey, I want this as a fraction instead of a decimal. So now when I go to push enter, it will give me the fraction. So I don't know, fractions may be more uglier than the decimal on this one, but 1,157 200ths, that's what I got. How about negative decimals? Yep, the calculator will do that for us as well. So let's go ahead and get that started. So I'm going to start with my negative first. So that's the negative button, not the minus button. It's the negative button. And you can type in 0. You don't necessarily have to. So you could have just skipped that and just put the decimal in there. And then 32. So negative 0.32 would work just as well. Now remember, we do want this as a fraction. So I'm going to tell the calculator right now, I don't want the decimal. I want the fraction with the double arrow button. And then I'll just push enter. Let's see what we get. So yeah, the calculator give me this negative 8/25 on this one. All right, now the great news about these calculators, it will simplify fractions for us, even if we're operating and the answer ends up being a fraction. It won't even give you the unsimplified form. It's just going to simplify for you, which is super awesome. These calculators will do it all, almost. So on this one, let's go ahead and type in our fraction right here, right? So I'm going to start with my 24, and then I'm going to use the N over D button to make the fraction. Then it takes me to the denominator. Then I can push the 30. Now all I got to do to simplify this thing, the only thing I have to do is tell the calculator, what does this equal? And the calculator will simplify it for me, and I get 4/5. So the calculator says, hey, you know that fraction you gave me? I simplified it for you. 4/5, and it's done. No need for double arrows on this one. No need for parentheses, nothing like that. Just it simplifies it for us. Okay, well, what about 27/18? Yep, it'll do that too. So let's just go ahead and type this in. So starting with our 27 there. And again, this is a fraction, so I'm going to show the N over D button. If I use the divide button, remember that will change it into a decimal. It tells the calculator you want it as a decimal. But this one, I'm telling the calculator I want this as a fraction. Just keep it as a fraction. And so I'm now in my denominator. I push 18. And again, the only thing I got to do at this point to simplify is to push equals. And when I do that on my calculator, I get 3/2. Boom. All right, now, we need to change these improper fractions to mixed numbers. Now, before, what we did in the last unit is we actually used long division to do this. But as it turns out, the calculator knows how to use long division in order to change this improper fraction to a mixed number. In fact, you could simplify it technically first if you wanted to, but the calculator would do that for you as well. We can type this directly into the calculator. So that's what I'm going to start out doing. Let's just put this into the calculator first, and then we'll tell the calculator we don't want the improper fraction, we want the mixed number instead. And again, it will simplify that for us. Let's get started. So I'm going to type in my 198 first. That's my numerator. Then I'll type in n over d. Okay, so I'm telling the calculator I do want the fraction. And then I type in my 144. Now, I got to get out of fraction mode. Okay, and that's where I got to use the cursor here. To get out of the fraction, I'm going to have to use the right button. And it will take me now to the right of the fraction. Okay, so now I'm out of the fraction mode. And now whatever I tell the calculator to do, it will do for me. Okay, now I want to tell the calculator to change this mixed number, this improper fraction, to a mixed number. So where's that in the calculator? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so some of you can see right here, and I know it didn't print very well, but that's n over d. There's double arrow, then u n over d. Okay, so this is telling us, this function right here is telling us, the calculator is telling us, if you want me to go back and forth between improper fractions and mixed numbers, I'll do it. Okay, so that's what I want to tell the calculator to do. The thing is that it's right above this 10 to the power of n button right here, right? So it's not the original function of this button, so I got to go to what's called the second function of that button, okay? So that's what I will do. And how do I do that? Well, you can see the second function right here. So I'm going to push that button, second. And then I will push this times 10 to the power of n button to access the second function of that button, which is, well, I guess we'll show that here. So I'm going to push that button. Oops. There we go. The times 10 to the power of n button right there. But again, right above it, it shows n over d with double arrows, then u n over d. Okay. And on the screen, it will show this. This is what we're telling the calculator that we want to do now. And so all I got to do at this point, in order for this calculator to change that into a mixed number, equals. And the calculator will tell us, hey, you want that improper fraction into a mixed number? No problem, I got it. And so not only will it change it into the mixed number, but it's also going to simplify it for us. And when I put this in the calculator, I get 1 3/8. See how it's even simplified. It's not even using the same denominator here anymore. It's using that denominator of 8 now. How about this one? Well, the process is exactly the same. So let's go through that process again. So I'm going to make this fraction first, okay? So I need my numerator of 72. I'm going to make it a fraction, so the n over d button. And then I'll type in the denominator of 42. Now I got to get out of my fraction mode, so I got to go to my cursor and then push to the right to get out of the fraction, the denominator specifically of that fraction. So I push to the right on my cursor. Remember your cursor is this one right here. And then I got to tell the calculator, hey, I want this to be a mixed number. So I use the second function of the button. The one we used last time there was the times 10 to the power of n button. So once again, just on the calculator, you're going to see 72 over 42. And then you're going to see like a little double arrow thing right here. And it's going to say n over d. No, what does it show? Oh, it's just one arrow. Yeah. N over d, then the double arrow thing. Then u n over d. And what do we get on this one? Well, 72 over 42 changed to a mixed number, 1 5/7. So that's what I get on this one, 1 5/7. Oh, I had to push the enter button. I forgot to put that in there. But that's it. Okay, so that's the button progression in order to change improper fraction to mixed numbers. We won't be doing this very often because mathematically speaking, we prefer to work with improper fractions, but if we see mixed numbers, it's possible to just put those in as well, which we will see. All right, how about mixed numbers to improper fractions? Well, you could use cycle method to do this, but as it turns out, the calculator has a mixed number function on this, and if we look just real closely over here, right, there's our N over D button, but right above that you'll see the mixed number function, okay, but it's in green, which means we're gonna have to access it through the second function here, okay, so let's go back out, and I'm gonna type in my -9/2 as a mixed number. So to do this, I'm gonna start by just typing in, or telling the calculator I do want a mixed number, okay, so to do that, I'm going to access that second function, see? So I'm going to type in the second button in the top left. Then I will type in my N over D button, which once again, it shows that it will change that into a mixed number right above it. And now on the screen, you'll see three boxes. You got the big box for the mixed number, and then you'll have kind of the fraction, stuff like this, okay? But it should be blinking where you have the whole number. Now I'm going to tell the calculator, well, I know what that whole number is. It's -9, so I'm going to push negative, and then 9. And then the calculator knows that's -9. Now I got to get into the numerator of the fraction, so that's where we have to use the cursor again. I'm just going to push to the right. And now the cursor goes into the numerator. So at this point, you should be blinking right here in the numerator. And I need to enter the numerator, which is 2. Okay. Now it's already showing the fraction, so I just need to get down into the denominator. So to do that, I'm going to use the cursor, but I'm going to push the down arrow there. That will take me to the denominator. The denominator is 11. Okay. Now, I don't want that, make it look like a button. You could use the same function we did before, the second times 10 to the power of n, but the calculator knows that it's usually easier to work with improper fractions, so if I just push enter, it's going to give me the answer as an improper fraction, which shows me as -101/11 right there. So this right here would be our answer. All right, you guys try this one. Try this one, then we'll go over it, okay? 30 seconds. All right, this is my button progression right here. So there is a slightly different way you can do this, but if you figure that out, you're welcome to use it, okay? But this is the button progression we're showing right now, okay? And on the calculator, of course, that would show, well, 4 1/5. Okay, now again, all you gotta do is push enter, and then it changed it for me into 21/5. Okay, so that would be our answer for this one, is 21/5. All right, the order of operations is so great and so fun. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, or division, and then addition or subtraction, but that's always from left to right, both of those. Okay, so forget about this PEMDAS garbage, okay, because sometimes it's PEDMOS and PEMSA, some kind of garbage like that, okay? Now, here's the other thing. Remember the order of operations. We got the parentheses, we got the absolute values, and then we treat fractions the same way as though they were parentheses. The great news about all of this is that your calculator already knows all of this. It knows all the order of operations if you will just type it in exactly like you see it when we see problems that have the order of operations. The only thing the calculator can't do that we see here is the absolute value. So you may have to do a little bit of calculating on your own. That should be, hopefully, that's fine. But it will do that. It will do the rest of this stuff, just not the absolute values. So my recommendation is to use the calculator, but if you're somehow, some way committed to just doing this by hand or in your head, you're welcome to do it. It's just usually that path is fraught with peril and lots of mistakes, which is okay. I mean, you're old enough to make your own choices, but whatever, okay? So I'm going to be using the calculators to do these. Like a problem like this one, hey, no problem, man. The calculator will do it for us. You don't have to worry about keep, change. This would be an addition problem in the end. And then you'd have to worry about making the denominators match, right? Common denominators, because it's addition or subtraction. Well, if I just type it in the calculator, it'll do all the work for me. It will do all the work for me. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with my first fraction. So I say it's a 4 thirds. So 4 n over d thirds. And at this point, I got to get out of that fraction. Okay, so I'm going to use the cursor button to get out. Push to the right. Then we got a minus sign. So let's put our minus sign out there. It's minus, not a negative button, by the way. And there's a very big difference between those. If you say 4 thirds negative, parentheses negative 3/4, that you're telling the calculator something very, very different. But now I need to open a set of parentheses, which is the button that's just right above 8. That's the open parentheses, and then we're going to close it with the button above 9 in the end. Now this fraction is negative 3/4, so I'm going to need a negative. Now, so there's my negative button. And well, it's negative 3. And then it's a fraction, so n over d. Then I get my 4. Now before I close this set of parentheses, I gotta push on my cursor. I gotta push to the right again. Now that I have that, I can push the enter button. Okay, so there's my equals button, and let's see what we get. So I forgot to close my parentheses, didn't I? Yeah, make sure you do that. So you should close the parentheses right there. Okay, so here's what I get when I push enter: 25 twelfths. Okay, so that's what I got. And that would be the answer there, 25 twelfths. Did I have to do any extra work? Nope. Did I have to make the common denominators? Nope. Did I have to use keep, change? Nope. All I had to do was put it in the calculator, and it did it for me. Thank you, calculator. How about this one? Negative 3 plus 11/8. Man, this one's rough. But however rough it is, no matter what you think, the calculator will do it for you. So let's make the calculator do all the heavy lifting for us, starting with a parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to open up a set of parentheses. This is negative 3, so I need the negative button, not the minus button. And then I can push my 3, and then I'll close that set of parentheses with the button that's just above the 9. Then it's plus, so that's the operation plus. And that's 11/8, so I'll type in 11 now. Then my n over d button. And I want that denominator to be 8, so there's 8. This one, I already closed my set of parentheses, so I'll just push enter now. See what we get. So yeah, my calculator gives me this negative 13/8. There it is. How about using a calculator to evaluate this? Yeah, no problem. And that's just multiplication now. So we're going to be looking for the multiplication button right here, right? So let's go ahead and type this in though first. So I'm going to type in my negative 29ths. So I need the negative button, which again, it's different than the minus button. Don't push the minus button for your negatives. Now I'm going to type in my 20, and then it's a fraction with 9. So n over d, that will take me to the denominator, which is 9. So I got to get out of that fraction now that I've completely put it in. So I'm going to go to my cursor and then push to the right. Okay, that gets me out. Now I will push my multiplication button. And now I need a negative 2/3. So there's my negative button again. And then a 2, fraction button, n over d, and then 3. And I can just push enter right from here, and it will give me the answer. You just type it in real quick. All right, so my calculator gives me 40/27. Boom. So once again, we didn't have to worry about this having the 2 negatives in it. We didn't have to worry about multiplying or simplifying. All we had to do is put it in the calculator, and then it knew what to do. All right, you guys try this one. That's division. Division with fractions, in fact. But the calculator will do this for us. So nice. Try it out. 1 minute, go. All right, if it's still working, do finish this up, but I'm going to go ahead and get started on this one. So I'm going to type in my negative 7/6. Now, notice that I don't really care how this comes out. I'm going to just type in my negative 7 right here. And then I'm going to use the n over d button, 7/6, right? So 7 over 6 like this. Now, you'll notice on the calculator that it's still showing the negative out in front of the 7/6. That doesn't matter. Even though the problem is showing the negative with the 7, right here, it doesn't matter. Okay, so even though the calculator is showing it like this, that's okay. Well, this is division, so I'm going to have to take all those values and divide it. Oh, I got to get out of the fraction mode, right? So yeah, use the cursor to get out. Now push your division button. There we go. Okay, so there's divide. What are we dividing? Well, I'm dividing 5/4, so 5 n over d fourths. And from here, I can just push enter, see what we get. So in the end, the calculator, just after I push enter there, gives me negative 14/15. That's it. But here we got lots of different operations to perform. We got some addition, subtraction, some parentheses, and some multiplication. We're still not seeing those exponents, but that's okay. It's possible we may in the future, but it doesn't look like we are now. So let's just type this in, okay? So starting with our open set of parentheses. So that would be the button just above 8. That's the open parentheses. Then I'll have to type the 1. It's being added to 4/3. So I got to type this fraction in, right? So 4, here's my n over d thirds. Now I still got to get out of this fraction though, so I'm going to use the cursor to get out to the right. And then it's minus, so remember it's minus, not negative. So minus 5/4. 5 n over d 4. Okay, now I got to get out of that set of parentheses, or that fraction, so I'm going to push over, and then I'm going to close that set of parentheses. Okay, now that's just the parentheses portion. I still got to continue this problem by showing that it's still being multiplied, so I'm going to push the multiply by 1/3. So 1 n over d 3. And you'll see that on the calculator it shows exactly like it does in the problem. You have the parentheses, 1 plus 4/3 plus the minus the 5/4. You got the close of parentheses, it shows multiply, however it does, and then the 1/3. Okay, so now I'm going to push enter. One thing that I think is pretty cool about this calculator is it even made the parentheses bigger to match the size of the fractions there. But in the end, when I pushed enter, I got 13/36 on this. All right, I don't know. To me, that's kind of a long button progression, but it sure beats the heck out of actually forcing the denominators to be the same, doing these 2 at a time, and then working through that way. The calculator does this for us, and it loves to do it. All right, here's a good one. Okay, so I'm going to go through this one and pay close attention to how I put this into the calculator, okay? Because it's not only just a fraction, but it's a fractions within fractions, that there's operations, other operations in the numerator and denominator. We're going to need all that stuff, okay? So in order just to start out with just this fraction line, I'm going to start out with the n over d button, okay? So that's the first button I'm going to push, n over d. And that will give me that fraction line. You'll see it on the calculator. Now, what's in the numerator? Because you can see that the cursor right now is in the numerator. Well, I got the 2/5, so I'm going to type that in. 2/5. 2 n over d fifths. And then, yeah, I got to get out of that fraction. So I'm not just in the denominator. So there's my cursor button. Now I need to open up a set of parentheses. That not hard to do. There's a button for that, just right above 8. Open up that set of parentheses. And then we need 5 plus that 1/3 right there. So 5 plus, I got 1, but it's a fraction with n over d 3. Okay, now I got to use the cursor button to get out of that fraction mode. And then I'm going to close that set of parentheses. Okay, so that's all, right now, that's all in the numerator. The rest of the problem, almost the rest of the problem, takes place in the denominator. So I'm going to get out of the numerator by using the cursor button downwards. And you'll see the cursor change from the numerator down into the denominator, okay? So I'm going to have to start a new line for the denominator here. In the denominator, we got a open parentheses. And then it's 2 plus 3, so 2 plus 3. And then we got to close those parentheses. And then we're going to multiply that. So there's our multiplication button. Multiply by 6. Then it says divide by 6. And then we still got that minus 4, but I got to get out of that denominator, the big fraction. So I've got to use the cursor to get out. I'll just push over. And then I will show the calculator that I want to now minus 4. You'll never guess what the last button is. It's equals, okay? So that's what I'm gonna push. Enter, let's see what it gives me. All right, I'm ready to push enter now. And when I do, even though it's a lot of stuff, well, it gives me a kind of an ugly fraction, but negative 268/75. That appears to be my answer right here. But you'll notice, even on the screen, it's kind of too small for me to write on, but on the screen, you'll have seen that it shows up exactly like it does right here. You can make it look exactly like it does in the original problem on the calculator, so it knows what to do from there. And notice how fast it did it even, right? All you had to do, the only work you had to do here, is punch in the numbers. All right, one more problem, then we should be pretty good for the homework, okay? But this one has some decimals, no problem. We can work with decimals, and the calculator knows how to work with decimals as well. Remember that the decimal button that we're going to be using is right next to the zero, sandwiched between the zero and the negative button, right there, at the bottom row. Okay, but we're going to type this in exactly like we see it. Okay, so we got 2.8. Let's start with that. There's 2, and we need the decimal, 2.8. Now I'm going to open up a set of parentheses, just like it shows in the problem. Then I'm going to type in my 4.5, so 4.5. And then we're going to add to that, so plus 3.3. And then finally, just minus 9. I'll close my parentheses. Remember, that's the minus button, not the negative button. Close parentheses. That's just the button above 9. And all I got to do in the end here is just push enter. And it will solve, the calculator that graciously will solve this for me. And this is what the calculator gave me. So I kind of feel like I need to check to make sure I typed it in correct. Yeah, it looks good. So the calculator just says, hey Sal, I got the answer, negative 3.36, okay? Now, if I remember right, on the homework, if you see problems like this, even it may want you to have the answers as improper fractions. Remember, there's only one thing you need to do at this point to change that into an improper fraction. The button right above enter is this double arrow button. If you push it, it will change that decimal into its improper fraction, which appears to be negative 84/25. Now, on the homework, it should specify if it wants decimals or fractions, but there you go. All right, there's our objective. I can use calculators to change decimals to fractions, fractions to decimals, and we need to be able to perform order of operations by just putting them in the calculator. That's all we got to do. The calculator will do all that heavy lifting for us. That's why I love calculators so much, man. It's so helpful.